Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've worked at this big retail store for almost 8 years. Started as a cashier during college and somehow never left. After a couple of years of dealing with retail chaos, I got promoted to department manager in women's clothing. It started as a normal Tuesday afternoon. I was organizing a new display of summer tops when I noticed her walking toward the customer service desk. She had that look. Handbag clutched tight against her side, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, lips pressed into a thin line, and in her other hand, a plastic shopping bag with what looked like clothing inside. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Return policy disputes were the worst part of my job. 5 minutes later, Melissa from customer service called me over. She said a manager was needed at the service desk. I walked over and saw exactly what I expected. The woman had laid out a tank top on the counter, one of our basic cotton ones that sells for about $15. It was obviously worn, with visible pilling under the arms, and that faded look clothes get after being washed a few times. I greeted her and told her I was the department manager, asking how I could help. The woman complained that the employee was refusing to accept her return and said she just wanted her money back. I looked at the receipt Melissa had already pulled up on the system. The purchase was from over 2 months ago. I told her that the purchase was made 60 days ago, and our return policy is 30 days with receipt for a full refund and up to 45 days for store credit. She dismissed this and said it didn't fit right and that she had only worn it once. The tank top showed signs of multiple wears and washes. The tag was gone and the fabric had that soft, slightly fuzzy texture that only comes after a few trips through the laundry. I said I could see the item had been worn and washed multiple times. I added that even within our return window we couldn't accept items in this condition. Her face flushed red. She asked if I was calling her a liar. I told her that wasn't the case and that I was just explaining our return policy. She demanded that we take the item back, saying it was defective because the seam was coming loose. She pointed to a spot where there was some stitching coming undone, but it was clearly from wear, not a manufacturing defect. I told her we couldn't process this return because it was outside our return window and the item showed signs of use. She told me to speak to my manager. I took a deep breath. I told her that she was already speaking to him as I was the department manager. She stared at me for a second, blinking rapidly. She then told me to get someone above me. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Like, okay, let me just summon the CEO of this massive retail chain for your crusty tank top. I told her that the store manager was not available and this would fall under my authority. I added that I had made the final decision on this return. She said this was ridiculous and said she had been shopping here for years and spent thousands of dollars at this store. I've heard this one before. Always thousands, never hundreds. I said our policy was clear. I offered her a one-time courtesy discount on a new purchase today instead. She refused the discount, saying she wanted her money back for the defective shirt. By now her voice had risen enough that customers were starting to stare. Melissa looked uncomfortable behind the counter. She said she would call corporate about this and asked for my employee ID number. I pointed to my name badge and told her she could contact customer relations with any concerns. Then she did something I didn't expect. She grabbed the tank top, stuffed it back in her shopping bag, and walked toward the exit. But instead of leaving, she stopped at a rack near the door, grabbed a new, identical tank top, and shoved it in her bag too. Did she really think we wouldn't notice? I signaled to our loss prevention team member who was already watching. As the woman approached the doors, he stepped forward. The loss prevention team member stopped her and said he needed to check her bag. She asked if she was being harassed. The team member told her she had been seen placing merchandise in her bag without paying for it. I told her her two options: either return the unpaid merchandise and leave the store, or we would call the police. She said this was outrageous and threatened to sue the entire company. Despite her threats, she realized she was caught. She yanked the new tank top from her bag, threw it at my chest, and walked out. The loss prevention team member asked if I wanted to file a report. I said it wasn't worth the paperwork but confirmed she was banned. I took a photo of her from our security camera footage to add to our Do Not Allow Returns binder. Some days in retail are long, but the stories make for great dinner conversation later. And that crusty tank top? It went straight into our damages bin. Even entitled people can't change store policy. My family has owned this small farm for 3 generations. It's nothing fancy. A few acres of land, a small herd of cattle, some chickens, and a vegetable garden that keeps me busy during the warmer months. After my divorce 2 years ago, I moved back to take over the farm when my dad's arthritis got too bad for him to manage it alone. City life never suited me anyway. Out here it's just me, the animals, and the occasional visit from the neighbors or my sister who lives about an hour away. That Tuesday started like any other. I was up before dawn, coffee in hand, ready to start my morning chores. I was heading toward the barn when I noticed the gate to the cow pasture was open. That was strange. I always double-checked the locks before turning in for the night. As I got closer, I saw a beat-up pickup truck parked near the fence line, and a woman I'd never seen before was attempting to lead Bessie, my prize Holstein, toward it. This stranger, a middle-aged woman with bleached blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, was trying to steal my cow in broad daylight. I shouted at her, asking what she was doing with my cow. The woman jumped, startled, but quickly composed herself. Her eyes welled up with tears almost instantly. She responded with a sob story about how she was looking for the owner and apologized for the bother. She claimed to be in a terrible situation with starving children at home. She said they hadn't eaten in days and she was desperate, just needing to feed her babies. Her story didn't add up. For one thing, she was wearing an expensive-looking watch. For another, stealing a whole cow seemed like a pretty extreme way to solve a hunger problem. I told her I understood times could be tough, but explained that she couldn't just take someone's livestock. She pleaded with me again, insisting her children were crying from hunger and that she didn't know what else to do. She kept sobbing, and I felt a twinge of sympathy. What if she was telling the truth? I couldn't live with myself if I turned away someone whose kids were genuinely hungry. I told her to wait there while I got something, making it clear I couldn't give her Bessie but could help her out. I walked over to the chicken coop and grabbed 2 of my plumper hens. They'd make a decent meal for a family. I offered her the 2 chickens instead, explaining they would feed her family for a couple of days at least. I expected gratitude, but instead, her face twisted with disgust. She rejected my offer of chickens, insisting she needed the cow. She claimed her children needed milk and beef and dismissed my chickens as scrawny birds that wouldn't do anything. That's when I knew for sure she was lying. Someone truly desperate would be grateful for any food. I told her I was trying to help, but that was my limit. I told her to take the chickens and leave, or I would call the police. She called me a selfish jerk and asked if I knew who she was. I replied that I didn't know who she was and didn't care. I repeated my instruction for her to take the chickens and go. She refused, saying she wasn't leaving without the cow. Before I could react, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small handgun, pointing it directly at me. She told me I needed to help her get the cow into her truck or things would get ugly. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't help but chuckle, which wasn't the reaction she was expecting. I asked how she planned to get a 1,200-pound cow into her little pickup by herself, even with a gun. She told me to shut up and help her immediately. I warned her that she had picked the wrong cow, explaining that Bessie had a bit of a temper. The woman ignored my warning and started roughly pulling on the rope around Bessie's neck, trying to drag her while keeping the gun pointed in my direction. Bessie, who normally has the temperament of a gentle giant, doesn't take kindly to rough handling. I've seen her get annoyed when the vet comes for checkups, so I already knew what was about to happen. She shouted at Bessie, calling her a stupid animal and telling her to move. She yanked hard on the rope and slapped Bessie's flank. That was a big mistake. Bessie's eyes widened, she snorted loudly, and before the woman knew what was happening, Bessie lowered her head and charged. The impact sent the woman flying several feet backward. She landed hard on the ground, the gun skittering away, and didn't move. Bessie, having made her point, walked back to her favorite grazing spot, as if nothing had happened. I immediately called 911, explaining the situation. Within 15 minutes, both police and emergency medical technicians arrived. The woman was still unconscious, but breathing. When the police searched her truck, they found no evidence of starving children at home, just a collection of stolen items from other farms in the area, including tools, equipment, and even a cage with someone else's prized rooster. I pressed charges for trespassing, attempted theft, and assault with a deadly weapon. Turns out she had a record of similar scams across 3 counties. She wasn't a desperate mother, just a common thief with an uncommon target. Bessie got extra treats that day. I never had the greatest relationship with my birth mother. She's the type of person who seems to take pleasure in bringing others down, especially me. I've lived mostly with my grandmother over the years, but sometimes I had to stay with my birth mother. This happened when I turned 14. I had planned a birthday celebration with the few friends I had. Nothing big, just seeing a movie, getting ice cream, and finishing the day bowling. The day started with my birth mother making her usual comments. She told me not to eat too much cake, warning that I didn't want to gain weight. I ignored her as I got ready for my friends to pick me up. She questioned my plans, asking if that was all I had planned because I didn't have many friends. I said it was what I wanted to do. She responded and then told me the movie I was going to see was terrible. She spoiled the entire plot, saying the main character dies at the end and the villain gets away. I tried not to let it ruin my mood, but it was hard when we watched it. After the movie and ice cream, we went to the bowling alley. I was starting to enjoy myself when I heard a familiar voice from across the room. My birth mother was there, drunk, laughing too loudly, and talking about uncomfortable things. I tried to ignore her and focus on bowling, but she kept getting louder. Then I saw her getting ready to leave with 2 men I'd never seen before. As she walked out, she shouted to everyone that I was her daughter and told them not to tell me she was leaving with these guys. She pointed at me while the men laughed. Everyone looked at me. My face burned with embarrassment as my friends pretended not to have heard. The next day at school, word had spread. Kids made comments about my birth mother and asked if I was going to be like her. It was humiliating. After school, I went to her house to confront her. I told her that she had ruined my birthday and that everyone at school was talking about what she did. She dismissed my concerns, telling me not to be dramatic. She said if I wasn't such a boring kid, people would have something else to talk about besides her. I said at least I didn't need to get drunk and leave with strange men to have a good time. She told me to watch my mouth and said I was jealous because she knew how to have fun and people wanted to be around her. I couldn't take it anymore. I left her house angry, but on the way home, I passed a pet store. In the window, I saw containers of live crickets for feeding reptiles. An idea formed in my head. The next day, while she was at work, I went to her house using the spare key. I went to her bedroom and released about 15 crickets I had bought. I put them around the room, behind furniture, under her bed, and in corners where they'd be hard to find. That night, I heard the crickets chirping, but my birth mother didn't say anything. The second night, the chirping continued, but she acted like nothing was wrong. On the third day, I caught her looking at her bedroom windows. When I asked what she was doing, she told me it was nothing, and to go away. That night, she snapped. She told me to go outside and stop the crickets from chirping because she couldn't sleep. When I asked how I should do that, she said she didn't care and just wanted me to make them stop. I grabbed a soda, some chips, and a book. I went outside, sat on the porch, and read my book. After about 1 hour, I went back inside. I told her I had squished every cricket I could find. She said good. The next morning I found her sleeping on the couch, looking tired. Later that day I heard her on the phone with her friend. She was saying how bad her night had been, unable to sleep because of the crickets that she couldn't find. She saw me smiling and her eyes narrowed. She asked if I had done something. I said I wasn't sure what she meant, but if I had done something it would be deserved for ruining my birthday and causing my school peers to bully me because she left the bowling alley with 2 guys. Her face turned red. She told me to get out to get my things and leave her house right then. I packed my stuff and called my grandmother to come get me. When I told my grandmother what happened, she told me that what I did was a bad thing. Then she got 2 cans of soda handed one to me and clinked her can against mine, saying cheers with a smile. I've lived with my grandmother ever since. Sometimes I feel guilty about the crickets, but then I remember when my birth mother realized what I'd done. It was small revenge for years of her cruelty. My grandmother says there's a difference between being mean and standing up for yourself. I think the cricket incident was the latter. I was the easy child. That's what my parents always told me. I went to bed when I was told, did my homework without being reminded, and didn't cause much trouble. My younger sister was a completely different story. When I was 8 and my sister was 4, our household became a battlefield every night around 8 p.m. Bedtime was a nightmare, and my parents' patience was tested. I remember this evening well because it became a legendary family story my parents still tell at gatherings. I was in bed reading a book before sleep when I heard the bedtime battle beginning in the next room. My sister could find any excuse to leave her bed. She needed water. She had to use the bathroom. Her stuffed bear needed a friend from the toy box. There was a monster under the bed. The list went on. That night I heard my father's footsteps going back and forth down the hallway, his sighs getting louder each trip. My dad told my sister this was the last time he would come to her room and ordered her to get back in bed and stay there. My sister said she wasn't tired, but my dad said it didn't matter because it was bedtime. I heard her feet going back to her room, followed by silence for about 3 minutes. Then the sound of her bedroom door opening again. My dad asked what she wanted now. My sister said she heard something outside her window. My dad said there couldn't be anything outside since we lived on the 2nd floor. My sister said it might be a tall monster. He walked her back to her room again, and this time his voice was stern. My dad told her not to take her head off the pillow again. The house went quiet, and I thought she had finally fallen asleep. I was wrong. 5 minutes later, I heard a shuffling sound in the hallway. I looked out my door and saw my sister walking toward the living room where my parents were watching television. She was holding her pillow pressed against the back of her head with both hands, walking carefully. When she appeared in the doorway, my parents looked up. My mom asked her what she was doing out of bed. My sister stood there with a serious expression, pillow still attached to the back of her head. My sister said that, since Dad said she couldn't take her head off the pillow, she brought the pillow with her head. There was silence before my father covered his mouth. His shoulders were shaking. My mother was biting her lip and looking away. My dad said that wasn't what he meant. My sister said he had said her head couldn't leave the pillow, and her head was still on the pillow. My father looked at my mother. My mom said my sister was following instructions, to which my dad said her comment wasn't helping. My sister stood there, still holding the pillow to her head. My dad said she needed to go back to bed, and the pillow needed to stay under her head. My sister said he hadn't said that, only that her head couldn't leave the pillow. My father's face was turning red. My mother was giggling into her hand. My dad made a new rule that both my sister and the pillow needed to stay in bed. My sister asked if the whole pillow had to stay in bed, or if part of it could come out. My mom said the entire pillow and the entire child needed to be in the bed. My sister then asked if her hair could hang off the bed. This went on for another 10 minutes, with my sister negotiating the bedtime agreement like a tiny lawyer. My parents got her back to bed, but not before she got an extra story and permission to sleep with her favorite stuffed animals. The next morning at breakfast, my parents kept looking at my sister. My dad said that while my sister might be a handful now, her thinking meant she would either become a lawyer or give them gray hair before they turned 40. My mom said probably both. Years later, when my sister and I argue, my parents still bring up the head on the pillow incident as proof of her talent for finding loopholes. When they tell the story at family gatherings, everyone laughs, especially my sister, who still says she was following the rules. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.